Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Ah, Smart Water. Pure, crisp taste.
That's really good water.
It's the kind of water that says, I have my life together.
I do feel more sophisticated.
Smart Water. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party and the County Chair of the Republican Party in Suffolk County. With us is our co-host, good friend, esteemed colleague, Eric Levine, a noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. In the second segment of this show, we're going to have a very distinguished guest, the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, Tim Griffin, former Lieutenant Governor of that state, former member of Congress, former United States Attorney, and now chair of a great group called Protecting America's Action Fund, which we'll be talking to Tim about when he comes on. So please stay with us, and we'll have Tim on in the second segment. Gentlemen, so let's begin. Let me say to you in my introductory remarks, Trump had a grand tour, is still in the process, I gather, of his grand tour to the Middle East. So he was in Saudi Arabia, he was in Qatar, or however they pronounce it this week, United Arab Emirates. He's making deals. He's running around hustling. You can see the real estate developer in him. He's bringing back jobs for America. He's bringing back investments in America. In very many ways, this is a great opportunity, but these are both opportunities and risks. He's putting a lot of pressure on Hamas, and he's putting a lot of pressure on Israel to cut a deal. We'll go into great detail about this today and other times about how that's going to play out. I'm very skeptical about pushing Israel to a deal because they have to live next door to the Hamas characters who are savages, who are rapists, murderers, destroyed human life, about 1,200, 1,300 people, kidnapped a couple hundred more. They have no moral integrity. You can't cut a deal with them. They're dedicated to the destruction of the Jewish people and of Israel. But he's trying to push that. The other thing that concerns me, he's also making noises that he's very close to a deal with Iran. Now, we just had former Speaker Newt Gingrich on the Cass and Cosby show, and in our conversation with Speaker Gingrich, he made a very good point. And I don't know if he was listening to Jesse, Eric, and me and our concerns, but my view has always been no deal is far better than a bad deal. And he said what I've been saying, how in God's name do you verify what the Iranians really are doing? And are you going to wake up one day and they have nuclear weapons? And to that issue, it was pointed out that Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, failed to find out that there was yet another nuclear site in Iran, and that was revealed by the underground in Iran, the anti-Mullah underground. So when Tulsi Gabbard goes out there and says there's no intelligence information, I would respectfully submit to her there's no intelligence, because if the underground can find it and American intelligence can't find it and Israeli intelligence can't find it, and they have to rely on the Iranian underground, how the hell are you ever going to verify whether or not these people who are dedicated to destruction of Israel as the little Satan and to America as the big Satan, how are you going to really know what they've done? You cannot trust them. And if you think you can trust them and make a deal, you're mistaken. And I think that's Trump's weakness. He's obsessed with making a deal. He's obsessed with not having war. I don't want war. Nobody in their right mind wants war, except there are some times that you have to resort to military resources to protect and defend our country and Western civilization. Eric, your thoughts?
Well, I've always been of the view that any deal with Iran is a bad deal. There can't be a deal with Iran because, as I've said before, they're going to want to continue to be able to enrich uranium up to weapons grade. And even if they say they won't, they say, okay, then we want to be able to enrich uranium up to, for a civil nuclear program. The problem with that is as soon as you can enrich, and soon as you have the centrifuges, you always have the capability to enrich to weapons grade. So they can't have any centrifuges, and they can't have any entitlement to any enrichment. They're never going to give that up. But let's assume for a moment that they do. Then what are they going to want in exchange? They're going to want sanctions relief. But you can't give them sanctions relief because if you give them sanctions relief, as we know from the Obama years, they're going to take that $120 billion and they're going to rebuild their military and they're going to rebuild their global terrorist network and they're going to rebuild and they're going to seek to empower themselves with their hegemonic goals in the Middle East. They're going to fund Hamas. They're going to fund Hezbollah. They're going to fund the Houthis. So there's no deal to be made with Iran. So by definition, any deal with Iran is a bad deal. But let's assume for a moment we just leave it at on the nuclear program. The good news is there is tremendous support certainly on the Republican side in the Senate, but I believe there's also bipartisan support for the theory that Iran cannot be entitled to any enrichment capabilities. If that's the case, there won't be a deal because the Iranians are already saying that they'll never give that up. But at a minimum, if there's a deal made with Iran, it must go to the Senate as a treaty to give the Senate its constitutional power.
Unless Trump tries to bypass the Senate to say what Obama did.
Well, if he does that, then he's made an Obama deal. And I don't think he wants to go down in history as making a feckless deal as Obama did. So hopefully, if he does make a deal, at a minimum, it will entail zero enrichment and zero centrifuges. So call me extremely skeptical, but I'm also a little concerned, as you are, Richard, when Trump says we're close to a deal. I just don't know what that deal could possibly entail. And then that gets us to the point you made about there's a lot of pressure being put on Hamas and Israel for a ceasefire. Enough of ceasefires. Let Israel win. Anything short of the complete and utter destruction of Hamas is a win for Hamas and a loss for Israel and the United States and Western civilization. It's a win for Iran. It's a win for the bad guys. It's not so much that Hamas can no longer have a role in a post-war Gaza. Hamas cannot exist, period. That's the price they have to pay at this point. What the Palestinians have always relied on, always, whether it's Hamas, whether it's the Palestinian Authority, whether it was the PLO before them and Yasser Arafat, was that no matter what they did to the Israelis, no matter how egregious their terrorism was, how many Jews they killed, how many Israelis they killed, they always knew they could always rely on the West, Europe, and the United States to save them from themselves, that they would stop Israel short of complete victory. Those days have to end. Israel has to be allowed to win, and winning is defined by completely destroying Hamas. Period. End of sentence. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Jesse, your thoughts?
Thank you. It's great to be here again. Let me just take the last section first. Maybe not Hamas, but Iran. I think just on Thursday when we are taping this show, first of all, I believe and I understand that no matter what agreement is reached on Iran in the Middle East, as it pertains to Hamas, is not going to happen without the input and the acceptance of the Israeli government. I think we can all agree that it's under Trump's administration that we've seen Israel, no daylight between Israel and the United States. They've done that diplomatically. They've done that economically. They've done it with military aid. So as we go
well, they did in the war.
Let
me interrupt 1 second. Trump did announce he was ending hostilities with the Houthis in exchange for their stopping to attacking American merchant ships. But he got no commitment that they would stop attacking Israeli merchant ships, and the Israelis were caught completely off guard by that. They were completely unaware of it.
Mm-hmm. So I missed one.
They missed one.
Go forward with that. I really do. But when it comes to Iran, I do believe, and it's my understanding, that whatever is going to happen, whether it be with Hamas or with Iran, it's going to be a collective effort with Israel and the United States. And just today, on Thursday, when we're saying this, Trump once again is stating that there are two ways of going about this. The people, the leaders of Iran could do it the intelligent way, or they can do it in a brutal way. And the brutal way being that of airstrikes upon their nuclear facilities, and basically turning that area to dust. I think that as you move forward through this program, I do not believe that, despite being a deal maker, Trump does care about what his standing is, his legacy is, as he's in his second term, going back and on whatever statements he has made, especially of something of some significance such as this. Because if he has done that, if he was willing to do that, to cut a deal no matter what, then other issues would probably not have moved forward. So I do believe that whatever deal is going to come forward means no nuclear enrichment whatsoever. That's something that he has stated, or that everyone has stated, and I believe you're right, is universal in its support, especially in the leaders of government that are there right now. Now we look at Hamas and such. I completely agree with you. I believe that there's only one way. That way is to completely allow Israel to be victorious in that region, take the handcuffs off, let them move forward with that. I would understand and probably believe, not being a foreign policy expert, that there are some corner and some offices and some red phones that are going back and forth that is allowing Israel to recharge and reconstitute its military resources and its personnel. They have been going at this 24/7 for a long period of time. And that's why the first part of the ceasefire that has now since been abandoned, we all knew was a way for Israel and the Israeli Defense Force to truly take its breath. Now, as we move forward into the Middle East visit, I think that one of the things one way you can certainly say is that where there was once a vacuum, and we could disagree and pick apart the different parts of the motive, of the results of this visit, this 3-day visit, but certainly there is no vacuum of American leadership in the region any longer. The work that is being done in his 3-day visit there in the three Arab countries. Let me just speak specifically to Saudi Arabia, where there's an agreement of a $600 billion investment in the United States, a security package agreement of $142 billion for the military there. Trump addressing the Saudi business alliance and stating that he looks to see, and soon, Saudi Arabia going the historic Abraham Accords, where they recognize Israel. I believe, as I said, anybody can pick apart from a different perspective or their different agenda or how they feel that something should move forward as we go in a 3-day visit. But the one thing we can't argue with is that the American leadership is in the region. American military power, diplomatic power is in the region, and that vacuum that has existed there during the 8 years of Obama, and certainly even further in the 4 years of Biden, is now eliminated. America is filling that vacuum with American leadership.
I mean, to your point, one thing I do agree with, which is a very positive development.
At least there's one.
No, Jesse, I think you got it. That's the good news.
That's the good news. The president has imposed secondary sanctions on Iran. He didn't even do that in Trump 1. So what does that mean? So it's not just that they'd embargo Iranians for selling Iranian oil. It's countries like China that buy Iranian oil that will be sanctioned. So that's critically important.
Okay, we have to take a break. In a moment, we'll have our good friend Tim Griffin, the Attorney General of the great state of Arkansas. And we'll be having him as our special guest in the second segment of Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned for more important and interesting conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for a light and fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of graham cookies, caramel pearls, and dark chocolate, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 light and fit remix varieties with craveable flavors and up to 120 calories and 10 grams of protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Custom window treatments are a small upgrade that have a big impact. No better time to shop than now at Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale now. Save up to 50% site-wide, plus a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Joining us now is our good friend, the eminent Attorney General of the great state of Arkansas, Tim Griffin. Tim is just absolutely a fantastic guy, a former member of Congress, former lieutenant governor of the great state of Arkansas, currently the Attorney General, a very distinguished military guy, a wonderful person, and he's now the chair of a wonderful group called Protecting Americans Action Fund. It's an important group. Why? Because there's been an effort by left-wing progressives to undermine public safety and law and order in this country. And this has been funded by various foundations, funded by George Soros' Open Society. This is a threat to not just quality of life, but for public safety for every person who lives in the United States. If you don't have effective prosecutors who zealously enforce the law and do not let criminals off the hook, then we're in serious trouble. And the game plan has been, if they couldn't control the legislatures and get out of jail free legislation through the legislature, then they would undermine the integrity of the prosecutorial function. Mr. Attorney General, welcome to Let the Record Show. Tell us about what you're doing to make America safe again.
Well, let me just say, I was with y'all, I guess, a little over about a week ago, and I just met you the one time, but I really connected with y'all. I know we talk a little differently, but I had a great time, and you've really got some great people working for the right cause. I know it's an uphill battle in some parts of the country, but I really appreciate y'all having me on. And this is not, just to be clear, as you said, this is not an Arkansas issue or a New York issue. This is national. This is all over the place. So the bottom line is this. A few years ago, a number of wise people were looking at the landscape politically, and they noticed that, hey, there are a lot of groups working to elect and defeat members of Congress, senators, governors, sort of the top of the ballot races. But there was a lot of activity going on, and a lot of it not good, in down ballot races that involved not only school boards, city councils, things like that, but of particular import were the prosecuting attorney level. So these are down ballot races that are where the prosecutors are elected. They're critically important because these are the people that make the charging decisions. And what we noticed is the people that came before me, in particular, that started Protecting Americans Action Fund, they noticed that, wait a minute, the Soros folks are really investing in these prosecuting
tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of millions of dollars. And why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because it's a heck of a lot cheaper for them to have an impact at the prosecuting attorney level than in a Senate race or governor's race or whatever. And as you said, they couldn't change the law through legislation because they can't win the elections necessary to make those changes. So what they saw is an opening. If they could get progressives elected to these prosecutorial seats, they wouldn't have to spend much money. And once they get there, they have this broad prosecutorial discretion that is normally just used to decide, okay, do we prioritize this or do we prioritize that? But in the case of some of these extremists, what they were doing is basically saying, I'm not going to enforce the law.
And we have Alvin Bragg here in New York as a perfect example.
Yeah, so you're well aware of the power of these slots, even though they're, quote, down ballot, and how they can effectively, without changing the law, they can have the result as if you change the law because they ignore it. And so a lot of people on the right side of things said, wait a minute, this is an area where no one on our side is taking a stand and getting involved in the races. And that's where Protecting Americans Action Fund came from. The first chairman was Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of Virginia.
Wonderful guy. Wonderful guy.
He's an excellent guy. They had a huge impact in a number of races around the country. And these aren't just in blue states. In some red states where there's an urban area, you have these same fights. And I just took over as chair earlier this year. So the bottom line is we keep an eye on these elected prosecutor races around the country, and we either look for people that are doing a good job that we want to help stay in office, or basically doing the sometimes boring, basic blocking and tackling of just being a good prosecutor. And then we see others that are wacko, progressives that we want to defeat, and we've been very effective at that. So that's the whole point of Protecting Americans Action Fund, to step into this particular area and stay focused on the elected prosecutors. And so in many cases, we could be in traditionally blue places. Like right now, we've got a few races on our radar that are in Pennsylvania, on the East Coast. There's one in Virginia, a couple in New York that we're watching. But make no mistake about it, we're watching races in Texas. We're watching them in Arizona, Florida, all over. There are races of interest to us. It's a little early in the election cycle for most of these races because most of them are going to be 2026. So we're getting a sense of who is going to be running against whom, and but that's the whole point of it. So what we do basically is we raise money to educate the voters, and we really focus, Judge and y'all, on the key issue of why does it even matter, right? I mean, that's usually what we're fighting is people think, well, I mean, a prosecutor's a prosecutor, right? But we've learned, and you've seen with Bragg and others where you are, that a prosecutor is not necessarily a prosecutor. And who you pick for these very important slots is directly related to your quality of life and your safety.
Eric.
So I would have to say, I mean, I think it's a great organization. Jason's a good friend, and when we met last week, it was a very, very impressive meeting, and it's something that can be achieved. We've seen it in Philadelphia, we've seen it in Los Angeles, we've seen it in San Francisco. But I think one thing this can't succeed unless minority communities are on board, because they're the communities most affected by crime. More than, I mean, wealthy whites or just wealthy individuals in general, they can buy themselves above it. They can move, they can find other communities. But the poor, who unfortunately are just disproportionately minority groups, they don't have that luxury. They're in these communities. So how do you get the message to them? How do you get the message out to minorities? How do you get them on board with what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, well, they're a critical part of the coalition because we need everybody who's engaged in the voting process, people that actually go pull levers. We need all of those people to become aware. So, as I've said with y'all, and as I say all the time, which is true, has the added benefit of being true, if you're not safe, you're not free. And the people that are the least safe are the least free. If you take a different road because you are scared of crime, if you drive an extra 5 miles because the gas station you passed scared you, you weren't free in those moments to do what you needed to do. And so you're right. Everybody's impacted, but the neighborhoods, the people that are hit hardest by the crime have a vested interest, unlike many other communities, the highest vested interest, because many of them are dealing with crime on the way to work, on the way to school, on the way home, right in front of their house, bullets through the window, all of that stuff. So how do we engage them? Well, what I would say is the stuff the ads we run, the messaging that we use, the facts that we convey, they are equally applicable to everyone. And it's a simple message about the straightforward consequences of electing someone who releases dangerous criminals versus one who doesn't, someone who promotes a culture of following the law, doing what you ought to do, rule following, versus one who is okay with chaos. And whether you live in a high-income neighborhood or whether you live on the other side of town, the messaging that we use, the facts that we use, everybody should have an interest in them.
Mr. Turnchild, yeah. I want to give Jesse a chance to talk to you. Jesse, I just want you to know, at the breakfast that we had last week, your district attorney, who you're responsible for electing, Ray Tierney, a great law and order, former federal prosecutor, former assistant district attorney, a great leader bringing law and order to Suffolk County, was at that breakfast with Attorney General Griffin. Jesse, your conversation with the Attorney General.
Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much. First, let me begin by thanking you for your service as a member of the Army National Guard for Arkansas. Certainly, as a truly a professional prosecutor, having served as a U.S. attorney in Eastern District, and congratulate you for an 85% victory rate in the 2024 elections in these counties. As I was listening to you, I think that, and I appreciate what Judge Weinberg has just said about our Attorney General, because you're absolutely correct, and we've felt that here in Suffolk County, that these prosecutors, local prosecutors, the downstate, the down ballot prosecutors, are the ones who truly can truly have a difference in making you feel safe and having crime rates going down. We've had, unlike yourself and District Attorney Ray Tierney, who are professionals in this business, we've had politicians, and both offices in Suffolk County have prosecuted, have elected prosecutors that have been more political than anything else, and we straighten that way out. I think that outside of the Washington D.C., the secondary epicenter of lawfare is here in the state of New York, in the city of New York, and we've seen that unfold over the last 6 or 7 years, especially when we see individuals like George Soros funding and trying to pick off prosecutors in our state and such. That we have to protect our district attorneys like Ray Tierney and our neighbor
and Donnelly in Nassau County. And we lost a good one upstate in Albany with David Soros.
Yep, exactly. But what I find interesting is looking through your record that some of the groups that you've been involved with, Pathway to Freedom, which is a faith-based prison mysteries, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, of course, the Florence Critton Home for Unwed Mothers. You can see how you've gotten deep right there on the ground level of our neighborhoods and our communities. And so you are firsthand understand how the broken window syndrome is critical to allowing us to feel safe and free. And I guess that what I want to delve into, is we have some limited time here, is that you just secured a $100,000 grant to fight human trafficking. Now, you're in Arkansas and such. Yes. But that truly demonstrates that the failures of the Biden administrations and the failures of the Democratic administrations that have left us with open borders truly has made every town a border town. Can you speak about how your work in community groups has led to you being in your prosecutorial pursuits, and of course with this human trafficking that you're fighting in Arkansas?
Sure. Well, no, I appreciate the question, and you mentioned broken windows theory, and that's really, really important to this conversation because it allows me to talk a little bit about the contrast and approach between progressives and sort of law and order prosecutors. So progressives, what they want to convince you of is that the only crime that matters in terms of prosecution are the really what they call serious ones, like violent crime, rape, murder, and that all other crimes should either be a lower priority or a no priority, whether it be smash and grab, drag racing, graffiti, all these different things. Here's what they miss. And you mentioned broken windows theory, which was James Q. Wilson's idea. He used to be a professor at Princeton. It was used in the 90s by Mayor Giuliani and others to clean up New York and other communities around the country. And what it basically says is the opposite of what the progressives say, which is it's not about the individual crime. It's about the culture you create. You either create a culture where you allow a lot of crimes to persist and thrive, or you go after all crimes, from the small to the large, because it's not about the individual crime. It's about creating a culture where people respect the rules regardless of the rules. And this is like when you raise your kids. I got 3 young kids. And you either create in the home an atmosphere where they get away with basically everything, and you get more of that, or you create an atmosphere, same in schools, of discipline, right? And the people, to your point, the people that bear the brunt of the drag racing, the speeding, the lower quality of life, the graffiti, all this, are a lot of these communities that are lower income that live with this stuff day in and day out. And I've seen the impacts of a lot of this working with Pathway to Freedom, which, as you mentioned, is a Christian prison ministry, working with even something called Our House, which is a homeless shelter for the working homeless in Little Rock. But when you reach out directly to the community and listen to them, you see that this is something everybody wants. Everybody, regardless of income, they want to come home to a neighborhood where they can walk and not be shot. They want to know that they're not going to hear drag racing all throughout the day and have people riding dirt bikes and things, four-wheelers, up and down urban city streets. All of that degrades the quality of life and sends a message that you live in an anarchical culture. And that's where the progressives get it wrong. They try to just act like if they deal with murder, then nothing else matters, that sort of thing. And as you saw with all the smash and grabs that made YouTube and everything else in California and San Francisco in particular, that was what we saw. But smash and grab and stealing, that was only one thing of a broader problem of just lawlessness, right? It's a culture of the rule of law, or you have a lawless culture. So I have worked really hard. We have a lot of prosecutors that are elected separate from me, but I've done, as AG, I'm not the head prosecutor, but I've worked really hard to send a message that we're going to work with the legislature, with the prosecutors, certainly with my office, to target every community, regardless of income, regardless of who that community supports, regardless of who lives there, regardless of what they look like. Everybody deserves to be free, which means they all deserve to be safe.
Tim, we have to sign off. I'm getting the signal from the booth. Please tell our listeners how they can help support Protecting Americans Action Fund and protect their communities. How do they do that?
Great. Well, just go to our website would be the number one thing to do. And it's enforcethelaw.us. Enforcethelaw.us. And all the info will be right there on the website. We'd love to have your financial help. We'd love to have you follow us and sign up for our emails and all that stuff. And we've already been effective. It's changed neighborhoods and communities, and we appreciate your time. And we'll be dining in New York soon, my friend.
Well, on behalf of Chairman Garcia, Eric Levine, and myself, it's been an honor and privilege to have the Attorney General of the great state of Arkansas, our good friend Tim Griffin, a great public servant, a great patriot, somebody who truly cares about America and protecting the American people. Tim, good talking to you. Thank you for being on the show.
Yes, thank you, Tim.
And we look forward to seeing you again real soon.
God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Call me anytime. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in about a few moments with more interesting and important conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air. This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Suffolk County Republican Party chair, as well as the vice chair of the New York State Party. With us is our good friend and co-host, esteemed attorney colleague of ours, a commentator, an essayist. And gentlemen, I'm your humble servant, Richard Weinberg, also known as Judge Weinberg. So,
among other things.
Amongst other things, but we won't go into that. It's privileged communications. So I want to raise two related questions, which has been troubling me for the longest time. The glory of the democratic system with a small d has always been the peaceful resolution of conflict and consensus building. That's the secret of a constitutional republic, which is what we have in the United States.
If we choose to keep it.
If we choose to keep it, as Benjamin Franklin said, correct. But today, there's less of a drive or less interest in consensus. People are going to their ideological corners. You have the emergence throughout the entire country of factions. You have factions that have emerged in the Democratic Party. Factions have emerged in the Republican Party, both on foreign affairs and domestic policy and economics. Let me set the stage for the discussion. I'm very concerned when it comes to foreign policy, because if you get this wrong, and national security, if you get this wrong, the very survival of Western civilization and of our beloved country is at stake. And the problem is the extreme left and the extreme right, while they don't agree and have no real consensus about how to govern, they both agree that there's something wrong with being involved and being an interventionist nation, and that we should be an isolationist and non-interventionist, which to me raises a very serious threat. You have that from the Democratic left, you have that from the extreme Republican right, and similarly with respect to the Democratic Party and Republican parties on economics and domestic policy. Traditional Democratic moderates, so-called blue dog Democrats, are gone. The Rockefeller Republicans, the Romney Republicans are dying. You have people on the extremes, and they're trying to get a tax deal through. And what are they doing? You're having people, the Democrats will not support any tax bill at all, so that means you'll have the largest tax increase in American history if they won't get it through. And then you have some people on the right who won't support it because it's not perfect enough. And they're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and they don't understand that it will destroy the Republican Party's victory chances in the midterms, and it's bad for the future of this country. You can't get everything. You can't solve all the problems overnight of deficit spending and huge deficits. So, Eric, I turn this over to you, then I turn it over to Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the country, at least the two main political parties, have been stretched to the point where the extremes on both sides have an outsized influence on the rest of the party, the progressives on the left, and now the neo-isolationists on the right, or the MAGAs. And what's the reason for this? I mean, what's the cause of this? Well, one reason is gerrymandering. You know, when you have a state, when you run for Senate, you, by definition, your entire jurisdiction, or the entire area you're running for, is the state. So you have to appeal to a broad swath of the political spectrum in order to get elected. Now, there's some states, of course, that are deep, deep red, and some of that are as blue as they come. But in many states, they're purple, and you have to have a more moderate, take more moderate positions in order to get elected. And that's why I think your average senator, there are exceptions, but your average senator tends to be more centrist. In congressional races, because of the advent of gerrymandering, which both parties do, and which has been going on since the beginning of the Republic, they set up districts where, okay, we're going to have this district where Republican will definitely win, this district where Democrat is definitely going to win. a D plus 12, an R plus 13. So when you run in those districts, you don't have to appeal to a broad swath of people. You just have to appeal to a particular segment of people. And that tends to bring out the more extreme wings of the party. Because you have red districts and you have blue districts. And there's only a few, and Jesse can speak to this better than I, but there are only a few purple districts, whether it's very few in New York, but even across the country, where you have to be more moderate in order to appeal to the other side to get elected. So that, plus a combination of campaign finance reform, which diminishes the roles of political parties in nominating candidates and elevates the role of raising money in campaigns, also plays into this. Also plays into having the extremes in the party becoming more powerful. But perhaps the most salient reason for this that we see is the way presidents are nominated by the two parties. Used to be you get in a smoke-filled room, and then the party leaders would say, okay, who's the most electable? Who represents our worldview and who can win? And you get people like Ronald Reagan, and you get some, Teddy Roosevelt. You get some really wonderful, people running for president. Ever since 72, basically, when they've changed most of the rules and they've gone to the primary system, then you see the party activists who tend to be more extreme because they're the ones more motivated to come out to vote. You tend to be nominating people a little more on the, I don't want to say the fringes, but a little more to the right or a little more to the left than what we would be normally accustomed to. Two candidates basically in the center, one center left, one center right. And that, I think, has led in large part to why we've seen the parties go to the various extremes that they have, particularly the Democrats, who are they are just off the deepest of deep ends. But this notion that we needed to have a primary system because it's more democratic than the smoke-filled rooms is utterly nonsense, because what's the small percentage of people that show up and vote in primaries who end up nominating people that will govern 335 million people? It's not much more than party leaders in their respective states. But under the guise and under the veneer of being more democratic with a small d, that's how we've evolved. So I think the system as it's evolved has resulted in us seeing some more extreme people being elected, in particular in Congress. So it makes it a little more difficult to reach consensus and getting things done.
Well, that's because you only have to. Let me add this: when you talk about the United States House of Representatives, and it talks about the gerrymandering, fundamentally you only have between 30 and 40 so-called swing districts.
Right. It's very small.
So the election really is in the primary, not in the November elections. And so the hardcore who live in so-called safe districts.
Right. And if you're
AOC and you're in a safe district,
right,
and you have a Republican running against you, it doesn't matter. And if she can get her hardcore out in the primary, she wins.
Right, and if you live in a one-party state like we do in New York, it's everything's done in the primary. I think the best example I ever heard was when Bill de Blasio ran for re-election for mayor. He got some small percentage of the primary vote because very few people showed up in the primary. So he was a Democratic nominee, and when you did the math, he was elected mayor with roughly 23% of the vote of the people, of eligible voters. That's what happens when you have one-party states. What's in America's best interest is if we have two strong competing parties, because that brings consensus. That gets people into the middle. That gets people working together. And what we're witnessing now, I guess, in Washington is the best example, of course, are just people butting heads. You got Looney Tunes on the left, like AOC and Bernie Sanders, and you have...
Don't forget Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I was just going to say. And then you have folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey, two mentally ill individuals on the other extreme. And it's difficult. It's impossible to get those groups to align, except on the issue of Israel and Iran. There they can align themselves. There they can agree that you shouldn't let the Jews drive American foreign policy. That's the one thing they're always able to agree on.
Jesse, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think that if it wasn't for the primary, we would not have the Reagan Revolution, because he was cast as someone as an extremist back in from '76 on into 1980. As you see, he turned out to be one of the.
Well, he almost beat Ford. He almost beat Ford in '76
on the floor. On the floor,
right?
Of the '76
the non-primary election, he almost won.
Yeah. So I think that. Listen, in a constitutional republic, when you have small majorities, you're going to see this type of polarization. I mean, this is a country, unfortunately, that's polarized, unless, of course, you look at an electoral map by counties and you see that sea of red. I think, what was it, that Donald Trump won somewhere in the area of like 2,800, flipped 2,300 counties throughout the state of New York, and you can see where the blue votes are. They're in urban centers in Chicago, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, Boston.
Why do you think they want to eliminate, the Democrats want to eliminate the Electoral College?
Exactly right.
Absolutely.
Exactly
That's
right.
what it is. And, I think that, unfortunately, you're going to see this when you have small majorities. Our country is a little bit more polarized than it has been in the past. I believe, is the advent of social media. It's also the advent of the 24, 7-day-a-week news cycle as well. We have access to information, most of it not accurate and not good, that we're being drowned with. But here, let me just talk about the two differences of the parties. You have the AOCs of the world, you have the Bernie Sanders of the world. They are the ones that are driving the majority of their party. They are the leaders of their party, and they are spewing what could be described by some, myself being one, as unpatriotic, un-American, socialistic views that really are to say that America is not exceptional, that America is not the shining city on the hill, that America should be one of many, when in essence we need a world order that's led by America. It was safe when that occurred, and it's going to be safe again as we have the Republican majorities in both chambers and the Trump administration there. But let me look at the Republican Party. We have our fringe. You mentioned some of them right now. Just in the House of Representatives, and I'd rather have this problem than the problems we have in Albany, where you basically have one-party rule where the left runs everything. It
100%.
does not matter.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
I absolutely agree with that.
In Washington, D.C., in the Republican caucus, as we're taping this, the Speaker of the House, who we have all agreed, and I think America agrees, he's the right man at the right time.
Oh, he's a national treasure. I love Mike Johnson.
He
I think
truly
he's
is.
spectacular.
Just the best.
Just the best. What did he do today? What did he do on Thursday? He gathered two very important wings of his party, the Freedom Caucus, the Conservative Hawks on finances and such, and those that we call the Salt Hawks, the New Yorkers, those people who want to restore state and local tax exemptions in this big, beautiful bill that we want to put forward so that we can stop the biggest tax increase in the history of our republic. Those two groups, from extreme places, from extreme ideologies, from extreme locations and communities and backgrounds, they're coming together, not for the purposes of blowing up the bill, not for the purposes of one-upping each other or forcing the other's hand. What they're doing is coming together in a consensus.
Yeah, but that's intra-party. That's intra-party as opposed to inter-party.
That's intra-party, but where you look at the Democratic Party, their intra-party party, there is a battle. Judge Weinberg said that. There are no blue dog Democrats. There are no conservative Democrats. There are no moderate Democrats. There is just one party now. That is one party driven by the progressives who hate Israel, hate American exceptionalism, who hate patriotism, and who will allow this diabolical acts in our colleges. And they basically let this type of I'm missing the word.
Extremism?
Extremist, thank you. I'm so sorry.
You can borrow it anytime you need it, Jesse.
That's true.
Richard has a glossary in front of him.
That's the difference, because right here, what's going on is the Democrats aren't going to vote for a Republican plan. That's just politics. And for the listeners to say they wish that we could all come together, and it's like Mr. Smith went to Washington. That's all. That's not the way the world works. Right now, it's the Republicans have an opportunity. They were given a mandate to run this country from Washington. They have to get their wings, different intra-party interests together to govern for the whole. The Democrats, they just want to take America apart. They want to eliminate American exceptionalism. They want to make us a socialist state, and we're not going to allow that to happen.
Well, on that very positive note, we have to sign off.
We're all going to sleep with one eye open tonight.
That's right. Rich just gave us the hook. All right. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Thank you for listening. God bless you. God bless your families. And, of course, God bless America.
With so many options, why choose Arizona State University?
For me, the only online option was ASU because of the quality. Their faculty was really involved with their students and care about your personal journey. The dedication to my personal development from my professors, that's been extremely valuable to me.
Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.